there aren't a lot of times when I get on the air and I'm really happy, but I haven't gotten the chance to really get hyped up this NFL season like I did earlier this evening, just watching the Washington Redskins implode. They fell apart and they're not going anywhere. They're going to crash and burn for the rest of the season, I feel. And in my opinion, it's refreshing to be able to actually discuss something like that, discuss just a football game, as opposed to some protests, which we are going to get to later. But, a lot of me getting on this stream, whenever I do, is talking about stuff that I like, which is why you should probably get a channel that you want, that you define, where you can talk about any shit that you want. I could be talking about all the other Gladio stuff that I usually do about how there's state surveillance of private citizens and things like that. I could be talking about all of that, but for the next 5 minutes, while a couple people walk into this room, I'm going to talk about the Cowboys game. So, look, it was a game we were supposed to lose. It was a game that was. What do you think about the illegal walking free? What the hell is that about? What is that? Tell me what you mean, Gabriel. It's interesting. You're definitely not going to care about the Cowboys game because you live in jolly old England. But look, we were supposed to get our asses kicked. Our team has been garbage for the past few weeks, and we're going into this game at home against our worst rival. And they basically fumbled the ball like five times, or no, they fumbled 3 times. We got 2 of those fumbles, 2 interceptions, fantastic defensive play, fantastic running. I am happy to be here talking to you tonight, at least for the next couple minutes, about the team that I've seen disintegrate the past few weeks. Finally, something happened, and we just took it to the Washington Redskins. And believe me, in the first quarter, I didn't think we were going to go anywhere. Luckily, there was that. I think it was the first fumble was on a pass, and then the second fumble must have been it was on a kick return by Jamison Crowder, and that was about it. The Redskins kind of made a couple attempts to recover. They did get a couple of touchdowns, but honestly, I've hated that team for so long for so many different reasons. Uh, he says, Gabriel, no, don't go away. I'm about to finish with that. It says, sorry, I'm not staying to support the anti-American NFL by. Well, I'm not here. I'm not supporting the NFL by, I'm logging on to Amazon. I can watch the game. I'm not here. Look, if you are truly a fan of something and it has nothing to do with politics, it has everything to do with what you think about, just wanting to enjoy something. I don't think that you can politicize it. Now that they've been trying to politicize it, and that's the problem. So for those of you that are going to say, well, what are you, some sort of, you want to have it both ways? Well, no, I have it my way. I have it my way because the NFL has gotten itself into this mess, and the only team that is keeping it afloat is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, if they were to continue on this path, which they are doing, and which we are going to get to, it's not going to matter. So this could be the last season where that actually matters. Watching these games next season, think about it. There could be a strike. There could be all sorts of shit happening. So I might never get another chance to watch this team play at a high level. Now, I know I might be exaggerating and I might be a little premature here, but I don't think that there's anybody out there who's been an NFL fan for the past few years who wouldn't agree with me on that. Now, if you will see, there's a little different view here today. That's because I have my new desktop PC, which is actually pretty good. I was watching the game earlier on it. So I hope that the quality of the videos is showing through. And I'm pretty sure that the audio is doing a little better. Now let's leave the NFL, okay? Because I know none of you tuned in to watch me gloat about a football team between two, or a football game between two teams that probably aren't going to make the playoffs. So there's a few topics that have been heavy today. There's the tax reform. There's more of this sexual harassment shit. And there is a little more news about the protests. I could have gone into the whole Eli Manning issue in the NFL where he was asked to start a game and then gets benched. But I'll leave that for a different day because I know most of the people logging on here don't give a shit about the NFL. They might not even be from the United States. I think a few of my few subscribers are from Canada and the UK, and I think even from Spain. A couple of the people that you've seen on this podcast in the past, and the Catalonia podcast, for example, I think they've subscribed to me, and they don't care about the NFL. So speaking of Catalonia, a couple days ago, the Catalan Prime Minister, he's the Prime Minister who's been deposed, and I think he's going to be in jail soon because he's being extradited from the UK, from Brussels, the capital of the EU. He's getting extradited back to Spain. He's talking about getting a referendum to get Catalonia out of the European Union. So everybody who was saying, well, all this crap about Brexit meaning the end of the EU is garbage. Well, I think that you're starting to see things turning. The worm has turned on the EU. Over the years, many people thought that being in the EU meant that you would get more freedoms. There would be more of a brotherhood between these different peoples, between the Greeks and the Italians and the Norwegians and the Danes and the British and the Irish. Well, that hasn't happened. And in fact, countries that once were a little more stable have become unstable. Spain is going to have to deal with this separatist movement now because their whole identity within the EU has eroded and fallen apart. So that was just a couple days ago. I don't have any links in the description for that, but you can look it up. His name is Carles Puigdemont. And that could spell the end of the European Union. And for those of you that don't think that that's important, well, one of the main currencies on the exchange right now is the euro. It will probably tank at a certain point. Let me see how it's been doing. I don't know if it's been doing that bad. I know last week it was doing pretty awful. But all these people who are talking about Bitcoin being a scam or whatever, well, the euro is looking like a scam too. Let's see, foreign exchange here. The euro actually gained today. Let me see, it's trending for the past week. Yeah, it had a bad week last week, I think. Look at the monthly thing. Yeah, I guess it's recovered. But at a certain point, I think that the euro will be a thing of the past. It's not going to last, mostly because these countries are basically debt hellholes. Greece, Spain, Italy. You're going to see a lot more friction coming to the surface there, and deservedly so. They deserve everything that they're getting. J-Man Truth Seeker says the only scam is fiat money. You know what, man? I'm starting to really explore that. What do you call them? Cryptocurrencies. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'm not. I'd probably reveal how little knowledge I have of it, but I've been looking into it and I've been trying to learn a little more about it through, a couple investments, not very huge investments. J-Man Truth Seeker said it had an amazing week. It went to 11,500-ish, crashed down to 8,800. Has been, yeah, that's Bitcoin. So that's only Bitcoin. I'm not talking only about Bitcoin because people think that cryptocurrencies is only Bitcoin. No, there's a number of cryptocurrencies, and that's the whole point, that you don't have to necessarily invest in one of them. That there's a number of choices, and that's the difference. I think that these cryptocurrencies are they're going to force the fiat currency holders, the central bankers, to behave a little more responsibly, because now there's an alternative, and it's a flexible alternative. It's a flexible alternative, and that's what we're going to need in all these other industries where people think that more government control and manipulation is the answer. It hasn't been the answer. It hasn't been the answer in the housing market or in the healthcare market or in agriculture or in the oil industry, with OPEC. So, yeah, J-Man, I think you're absolutely right. And but on that note, I do want to move to a couple topics that I was going to talk about. There's all these rumors about Rex Tillerson leaving. Now, people are going to frame it this way. They're going to say Rex Tillerson leaving is a defeat for the Trump administration and that it is bad news for the White House. And a lot of Trump supporters will probably, or pro-Trump media people will probably accept that type of analysis. They'll have to play damage control. I'm actually taking the opposite road. I say Rex Tillerson exiting, no matter how. I mean, obviously, if there was like some sort of scandal where he screwed a hooker, that would be a huge embarrassment. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It looks like he's just exiting because there's just not much that the Trump administration has in common with this guy. He's a little bit of a low-key dude, and I think Trump wants somebody who's going to go out there and be kind of the face of his perspective on the world. And there's not a lot of people that can do that. But Rex Tillerson was, I think, brought in to simply do some organizational changes in the State Department. The State Department, for those of you that don't know, has been ruled by special interests for decades. They say, I'll give just one example. They say, for example, that Congress is too influenced by the Israel lobby. Well, and there's problems with the Israel lobby. I could probably do a broadcast, and I will one day, about why I have disagreements with the Israel lobby. Even with my own personal ties to the country, I think that they just do a bad job, and in many cases they simply perpetuate problems that they could easily solve. So that's Congress. The State Department is unduly influenced by the oil lobby, and by other special interests, by banking special interests, all sorts of other foreign special interests that they're into, basically pushing the agenda of certain corporate interests that are trying to use the United States State Department as a shield to go into places and take advantage of the legitimacy that it affords them. And I have to say that when the State Department goes and they issue these I remember in the past few years they had, for example, their discussion when John Kerry was negotiating the Iran nuclear deal. you had this spokeswoman, I believe her name was Emily Harf, and she would go in front of the cameras and she would just lie for 20-30 minutes about what it meant to be negotiating with Iran and whether Iran sponsors terrorism and whatever. Look, I understand that it's the State Department. I understand that it involves a certain amount of poker facing, but when you try to justify something that is basically, I got my laptop here too, a deal that basically accomplished nothing, that pretended to disarm a country that when it literally didn't do anything. It actually gave them money to pretend that they're not arming themselves, and I think that they are arming themselves. And for those of you that maybe I haven't really talked about that much, I think that Iranian people The Iranian people, they have some of the smartest population in the world. I have no problem with Iranians as a people. But as a nation, as a global power, they will become, if we allow Iran to expand unchecked, they will become a global power, and they're perfectly capable of it. I don't say this because I dislike them. I say this because I respect them, and their influence over their neighboring countries. Uh, in some cases it could be a bit positive, but in other cases it'll form this new axis against the democracies of the West. Now, this has happened before. You can't expect the third world or I guess non-European countries to just sit there and let America or France or Germany lead the way, and that's fine. But what Iran has been doing is expanding its influence by directly proselytizing people, actually sending people to try to convert people to Shia Islam. They've done it in Latin America especially. So the United States, through the State Department, has been a failure at counteracting it. And what I have here is the Atlantic. I'll show some of the articles. I don't know how long it is. It's just I don't know what the point would be of going too long, but it says here, the President of the United States and the man he made Secretary of State have been at odds almost since the beginning. Donald Trump and Rex Tillerson clashed over the Iran nuclear deal, NATO, the Qatar crisis, and North Korea. Then there were reports that Tillerson called Trump a moron, prompting the president to challenge him to an IQ test. Taken individually, each disagreement could be dismissed. Taken together, they made Tillerson's position untenable. The New York Times reported Thursday, citing senior administration officials, that the White House had developed a plan to force Tillerson out Tillerson by the end of the year and replace him with Mike Pompeo, the CIA director. If the report, which said Trump hadn't yet signed off on the plan, is accurate, Tillerson would join the list of the secretaries of state with the shortest tenures, with Elihu B. Washburn resigned after 11 days. He was then named ambassador to France. Even if it's not accurate, the report further undermines Tillerson's position and further saps his credibility. What could be worse for America's top diplomat than a leaked plan to replace him at some indefinite point in the future? So it says, if Tillerson's time in Foggy Bottom is indeed coming to an end, his tenure will be remembered for both its brevity and its turbulence. The former Exxon CEO's lack of government experience became a major sticking point among critics of his nomination. His close ties to Russia, where Exxon has vast business interests, were cited as a possible conflict of interest as the Trump administration became embroiled by controversy over alleged contacts between his inner circle and Russian officials. Tillerson's reorganization of the State Department also left much of its staff despondent over the future of U.S. diplomacy. He pushed back vigorously against criticisms that he was howling out American diplomacy this week in remarks at a forum in Washington, D.C. But on matters of policy, Tillerson has stuck to long-standing U.S. approaches, even if he has sometimes chosen different words to advocate them, and even if at times he has seemed to contradict Trump. So, there's all these denials that go through. This article doesn't really say anything else. Let me see here. The bond was tested after the white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Trump repeatedly compared the white nationalists to the counter-protesters who opposed their presence, going as far to say as there were some very fine people among them. So this is the typical thing that the media will do. You can take a serious topic here. This is a serious topic with Rex Tillerson, he's Secretary of State. Even though the State Department, to be honest with you, is kind of full of losers, and a lot of the people who work for it are a waste of space and a waste of money. But they have to shift it to Charlottesville, which in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't as important. That growing up, we had the Klan come and march here every year, and nobody gave a shit. And we're not even anywhere near the South. There's nothing for them to demonstrate for here. So when they keep bringing up Charlottesville, which in my opinion was was a day of probably it was a little larger of an event. Yes, there was a person who died, which is awful and tragic. But in larger perspective, it really doesn't. I mean, think about the Kent State shooting in 1974. 4 people died, and they made endless songs about it. It's not as if Charlottesville was this massive tragedy where people, they really, it's Charlottesville. If they keep bringing it up, that's just a sign that they don't have anything to talk about. And this article doesn't even say much, because if they really wanted to criticize Rex Tillerson, they would make the point that it has nothing to do with Russia, it has nothing to do with Charlottesville. The Secretary of State of the United States has nothing to do with commenting on a white nationalist rally that happened over a weekend when him and Donald Trump were dealing with some very serious North Korea stuff. I remember that. They were huddled together for probably the whole weekend. I think it was in Maryland or whatever it was. And dealing with North Korea shit. And people only want to talk about Charlottesville as if a white nationalist rally over some statues is the most important thing on the daily agenda. So, yeah, in this article, they bring that up, and it has nothing to do with Rex Tillerson. There's nothing about him reacting to it. There's nothing about his perspective on it. There's nothing about Charlottesville. What I would say is that, and this is where I say that I flip the script on the traditional media perspective on this. Rex Tillerson leaving the administration would be a good thing for Donald Trump. Okay, maybe he had something to do with reorganizing the State Department and firing people, but he wasn't a good pick. He was a huge head shaker, head scratcher. Who knows what really was the motivation behind it? Because I would say that it was one of the reasons I started to doubt the competence of Trump's cabinet picks. I thought that he was one of these guys who clearly he's a corporate snake. He worked for one of the most opaque corporations in the world, and they talk about his ties to Russia because yeah, Exxon Mobil, almost said Exxon Valdez, but which is that oil spill, but Exxon Mobil, they have ties to countries all over the friggin' world. I mean, they don't care about did these newspapers, did they care about Exxon's ties to Ecuador? They have huge oil fields in Ecuador. They have oil fields all over the world. It's a massive corporation, but no, it's all about Russia. It's Russia all the time. Comments from J-Man, it said, our government is rather silly sometimes, hard to know which part of it is the deep state and which part of it is real sometimes. I have to believe the media at some point is going to actually be punished by law. Well, indirectly, it seems to be the case that that's happening. He says, pretty sure it's illegal to deceive the public. Maybe someone can find ties with CNN and Iran. Well, look, I don't know about CNN, but Twitter was exposed not long ago for attempting to, everybody's condemning Russia Today now, which, by the way, when people talk about it being foreign controlled media, well, Twitter was offering them not long ago a partnership package where they were going to offer them some sort of commercial relationship. Suddenly these congressional hearings hit, and they're pretending like RT is some sort of ass cancer or something. No, it's total obsession. It's total obsession. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these companies like Twitter and Facebook and Google, they have partnerships with some of these dark regimes, these regimes that are ruled by absolute totalitarians. Well, where was it? In Pakistan, Facebook snitched on a guy who was accused of dishonoring the Prophet, Muhammad. So, yeah, there could be active collusion among some of these companies. It says, I find RT to be the most fairest source of news, never spreading BS. I think RT has some, they have some guys that just boil my blood, like Caleb Maupin, I think is a total trash, a Marxist, but he has the right to be on TV. if somebody hires him. If it's not like I get to choose. I don't get to hire for RT. RT gets to hire for them, and they have that crosstalk program, which is pretty good. There's a couple creators that I watch that go on RT. Two, two very good creators. They go on RT and they say their views, and that's it. There's nothing wrong with talking to a network, even if it's controlled by a government that's and the Russian government. I'm not defending their conduct. I'm just saying that if you want to attack RT, there's all these other companies that are international that you could attack. He says, never seen the guy, mostly just keeping up with the Kaiser report. Well, I haven't seen the Kaiser report, so that's it for that. Tax reform myths. Gonna talk a little about that, not too much. It says the tax bill is a tax increase on the middle class. Raising taxes on the middle class is wrong, and that's what this bill does, which is what Maria Cantwell said on CNN 2 days ago. It says, recognizing the popularity of middle class tax cut, Democrats are trying to use the bizarre world argument that the tax cut bill is actually a tax increase. They said a tax policy center report claiming the bill would raise taxes on 87 million middle class families. What the Democrats don't mention is that the Tax Policy Center is a project of the left-wing Brookings Institution and Urban Institute, funded by donors like George Soros, who want to disrupt President Trump's agenda by any means necessary. Now, I don't think that's an argument there. But it also says the Tax Policy Center can only arrive at this eyebrow-raising conclusion by making the unrealistic assumption that the tax cuts would expire after 10 years. In reality, the tax bill would provide significant relief for the middle class by doing the following: doubling the income threshold under which families pay no taxes at all to $24,000. Okay, so the lowest tax bracket gets raised. So there's going to be the possibility of more people not paying any taxes at all. So that's ensuring something for the poorest Americans and probably some of the younger Americans that aren't earning quite that much yet. Doubling the child tax credit to $2,000 and eliminating the 15% tax rate in favor of an expanded 12% rate, among other provisions. It says the above changes would save ordinary families thousands of dollars a year. Myth number two, the majority of the tax bill's benefits go to the top 1% of earners, and that's what Senator Bernie Sanders said. 60% of the tax benefits in the Republican plan would go to the top 1%. But it says Democrats are trying to distract from the bill's middle-class tax relief by claiming most of the benefits go to the super rich, when in reality the bill is targeted to the middle class. In addition, the middle-class provisions above consider the bill's relief for Main Street small businesses. The bill offers a 20% small business tax deduction for all small businesses earning less than $500,000 a year. This 20% tax deduction will allow small business owners to keep more of their earnings, helping them to compete with their big business and international competitors, as well as hire more employees, raise wages, and expand. According to the Tax Foundation, 97% of small businesses earn less than this $500,000 threshold, meaning the overwhelming majority of small businesses would see relief from this provision. But who would see little to no relief from it? The top 1% with annual incomes of $500,000 or higher. Given this clear middle class relief, how do Democrats back up their 1% claim? By pointing to the tax bill's provision to bring the corporate tax rate in line with international standards. Now, understand what that means, because I'm reading this for the first time, but they're saying that the top 1% are going to earn more, are going to get more from the tax cuts because the corporate tax rate is going to go down. But that's technically impossible. That's technically just not true. What they're trying to make the case with is this: that if you cut taxes for corporations, then they're going to end up giving more bonuses to top level executives in turn, and then that's how you reward the 1%. But that's an assumption. It's not necessarily true. Now, a lot of these companies, they could invest that money in equipment. They could invest it in expanding and creating jobs, or they could invest it in paying off some of their debt. if they have debt to other corporations. You don't know what there could be all manner of different uses for the money saved in the tax cuts. Am I saying that they won't use it to enrich the rich? I'm not saying that, but they're basing it on an assumption. It says, however, survey and economic different evidence demonstrates that corporate tax cuts benefit the middle class in the form of higher wages, better workplace benefits, new job opportunities, and lower consumer prices. Even higher dividend payouts benefit the middle class because the majority of corporate stock is owned by retirement plans, including IRAs, 401ks, and government pension plans that help ordinary Americans save. And then I'm not going to read all these, but it says the tax bill will grow the deficit by $1.4 trillion, which is what Sanders says. This legislation will grow the deficit by $1.4 trillion. Mark my words. Democrats are certainly pretending to care about the nation's fiscal state by pointing to the tax bill's $1.4 trillion of lost revenues on a static basis over 10 years. What isn't said is that this is only a 3% drop from the $43 trillion Congressional Budget Office or CBO revenue projection over this time frame. So, but in the real world, outside of the simplistic Excel spreadsheets, people will respond to incentives. With more money in their pockets and in their communities, consumers, businesses, and investors will spend more, creating economic growth that will more than pay for the $1.4 trillion in lost revenues. According to the CBO, every 0.1% increase in the gross domestic product adds over $250 billion in revenue over 10 years. This means that even returning to 2.5% economic growth, still well below the U.S. historical average, will more than pay for the tax cut. Now, I'm gonna finish this article now. I'm not gonna read any more of these. Another one of them is that it won't create economic growth. Well, already we're seeing massive economic growth right now, even without the tax bill, because there's simply a relief of regulations. Why would tax cuts stimulate economic growth? Well, the reason is that you would not have so much money throttled by government constraints. Once your taxes go to the government, okay, now we might think that they spend it very loosely, that they just throw it in the toilet, which they technically do, and they do it all the time. That's not the point. The point is that that revenue is kind of stashed away until they find a use for it, and then they can put, let's say they seize your assets, for example. Well, that's a more direct way of talking about it. That means that money cannot grow. It means you can't gain interest. You can't lend the money. You can't you can't invest the money in stock. You can't use the money to buy something. Let's say you want to buy a house. You want to buy a new car. Maybe you want to invest. You own a business. You want to invest the money in signage or in equipment, or in buying a little more space, or in hiring a new worker if you need it. So whenever you take money out of the hands of the private citizen and put it in the government, this is the most simplistic way of talking about it, you're simply freezing the mobility of that money. It just becomes inflexible. This isn't deep economic thought, guys. It's really very simple. Now, what does the government do? How do they create growth? When you're talking about like Keynesian economics, like when they say, well, the government should invest money into stimulating the economy, that's like the Paul Krugman stuff. I think it's kind of what FDR was doing. Well, their justification is this: they'll say, well, we can build this road, and this road will have the workers will build it at a prevailing wage, which is higher than the market value. So we're benefiting the economy by creating jobs in order to create infrastructure, and therefore that's how we get the middle class. That we give them better services and better infrastructure, and then that will help businesses. Well, unless you've been hiding under a rock, or you live in some city where, or you live out in the country where there is no municipal government, if you look at the way cities have spent public funds for decades. It's just a shit show. I remember the funniest. Watch American Greed. If you ever watch a show on mainstream networks on cable news, watch CNBC's American Greed on Kwame Kilpatrick, the former mayor of Detroit, and you'll see that's not an anomaly. Kwame Kilpatrick wasn't. The only thing that was out of the ordinary with him was that he was a huge guy. He looked like a linebacker. Uh, he kind of dressed like a Steve Harvey knockoff or whatever. But he would do the same things the other big city mayors did. Unfortunately, a lot of big city mayors with large populations of minorities of Black Americans, he would divert a lot of these projects, a lot of these building and infrastructure projects to his relatives or his buddies, and essentially they would loot the city of Detroit. And what did those people spend the money on? They would spend it on all sorts of treats for themselves, a lot of luxury items. That was the great. If you ever want to see the results of Keynesian economics, it's not quite socialism. Okay, I know a lot of you don't like socialism, but you have to be patient. It's not exactly socialism. It's more like just a system of patronage. It's big government run awry. Just checking the comments real quick. So when you now, I'm not going to say that we should have zero taxes, because I don't know of an example where that's worked either, but I could be wrong. But look, you need to let money flow wherever it may go. Now there's things that happen. People get scammed. There's no guarantee of success when you invest money. But that's the whole point. That even if the investment goes to waste, it's still done by choice. It's still done as a means of creating growth in government. When you try to create growth using government, you inevitably get to a very inefficient, very rigid, inflexible, just using a couple, synonyms here. It's just hard for it to adapt to the times. That's why the post office is so it's so much more efficient now that it has competitors, because when it was alone on the market, there were all these standards and regulations. They were just impossible to deal with at a certain point, according to people that I know. I think I've always been alive since UPS and FedEx became really popular. But you see what I'm saying? It is a real problem when we have one party that promises tax cuts and until now hasn't been able to deliver them, and you have another party that simply doesn't have an alternative. They would like you to believe that they're looking out for the middle class. That what they've actually done is that they've made the middle class dependent on government handouts as well. Government handouts are no longer the domain of the poor. You look at all these federally granted student loans. It's a scam. Student loans backed by the federal government are a scam. Okay. You look at some of these other things that the government has, these stimulus packages that have done nothing. The Cash for Clunkers program. So that's about it for that. The Matt Lauer stuff. Also, just another proof that these networks are collapsing. And I believe that when you look at what's going on with Nancy Pelosi, I put an article in the description. Nancy Pelosi has generally been a failure since she became a Speaker of the House. She was Speaker of the House for 4 years, accomplished literally nothing except for passing Obamacare, a bill she didn't understand. And now she's way over the hill. She's way over the hill, has done nothing to grow the Democratic Party, is actually scaring away progressives now. And this sex scandal with Conyers and possibly with other Congress members to come. They just said that the head of the Massachusetts State Senate, his husband has been exposed to have been harassed men. So this is a gay guy in Massachusetts. So that came out, no pun intended, today or something. And people are starting to realize that this Democratic Party is full of old, entitled, grabby idiots, morons. This is that's the institution that Nancy Pelosi has to defend. It's very hard. She's a woman who's well past her prime. Her memory clearly isn't what it used to be. She's referred to President Bush. Sorry, I just did it because I'm sleepy. But she's referred to President Trump as President Bush on a couple of occasions already. And these sexual harassment allegations, they're coming at a point where, first of all, they don't have an alternative tax plan, really. They may have one, I guess, on paper, but it's not really extending tax cuts. It's not giving tax cuts to the middle class. It's kind of a joke. And it really isn't a program to cut taxes, and they wouldn't want to cut taxes. But it's coming at a time when they really don't know. They don't know at all what to respond to Donald Trump. They don't have an alternative. Think about it this way, okay? Look at any of the policies that are up for debate right now. Healthcare. What do they want? They want to prop up a failed system called Obamacare. What do they want to do with housing? They don't have a solution for the housing crisis. All they want to do is every time they want to increase budgets, increase funding. Well, in reality, when you increase funding for programs that are already inefficient, then it's kind of like pouring gas into a car that has a fuel line leak. Okay, it doesn't matter. You can pour in as much money as you have, and you can borrow more money. It's not going to make a difference. It's a mentality issue. It's a mentality issue. It's a corruption issue, because these people know that the agencies that will receive this money are run by dependable people that would appreciate that the Democratic Party and a lot of the Republicans too continue to bankroll their comfortable lifestyles. Yeah, you could don't go down the list, and the Republicans in the military, they keep throwing money at the military. I'm of the opinion that you could probably trim the military a lot, and it would end up being a more competent force. So Nancy Pelosi, in the midst of all that, in the midst of having no ideas, in the midst of being a failure, losing House elections since 2010, so she's lost basically 3 in a row. I think it's 3 in a row. It's 2010, 12, 14, 16, 4 in a row. 4 in a row. In the midst of all that, she has to deal with this John Conyers clown, who I can tell you she had better really look into his past. This is a guy who he's been in the Senate, in the House for 54 years. His wife was a city councilwoman in Detroit, just a joke of a person, was laughed at for being told by an 8-year-old to act like an adult because she shouted at another council member. So I just have to say, she's in a horrible position, Nancy Pelosi. She has to defend idiots. And she herself, her mind is slipping. And this is basically advantage Donald Trump, advantage all the other people involved. And anybody but Nancy Pelosi is pretty much winning right now. Nancy Pelosi and her the Congressional Grab Caucus. Here's another angle. Okay, consider this. Now, John Conyers is probably going to. They're trying to force him to resign now. Now, with Nancy Pelosi, it was a very difficult issue to step out there and condemn Conyers, first of all, and then ask him to resign, because she could not remain, understand this, she could not remain House Speaker without the support of the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, what I'm about to say is it doesn't reflect on I'm trying to say this very carefully, because I'm not saying that this is a problem where it's the black people that are a problem, but the Congressional Black Caucus, just so you know, is filled with some of the most worthless politicians that there are. I mean, you have people like my representative, Marsha Fudge, has never introduced anything important in the House. You have people like Corrine Brown, who's not in the House anymore. She was convicted of charity fraud. You had Shaka Fatta, who was from, that's his real name, who's from Pennsylvania, also convicted of some sort of, I think it was a bribery case, I'm not sure. It was some sort of financial crime. You have Alcee Hastings, who was in court. I think he was convicted a few years ago of some sort of fraud, and then he was released from prison, and then he became a congressman. So the Congressional Black Caucus is really, in my opinion, a group of stooges that are basically carted in and elected and reelected over the years in order to keep their communities subservient to the Democratic Party. Now, in exchange, this is kind of a horrible situation for the Democrats themselves. They're beholden to them. Without the support of those communities and those members, a House Speaker cannot remain House or a House Majority Leader in her case. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi, without their support, she would be toast. She can't hope to win if there's like a vote to replace her as House Minority Leader. So that's the way it is. That's how politics works in D.C. and that's how and you know that's obviously people should understand that when you have so many, I think it's 30 to 35 members out of a total Democratic total of 178, I think in the House. I could be wrong. Maybe it's it might be like 192. Anyway, so they're a substantial portion, and she needs them. So she can't stand up courageously because A, she doesn't know how to. She's never done it in her life. And B, if she were to stand up categorically from the beginning, as she's now finally doing, and tell Conyers to resign, she would probably end up losing her support from them, and one of the other House members would end up unseating her and becoming the minority leader. So that's about it for Team Nancy. Just a shit show. Those people, the Democrats. So Colin Kaepernick's receiving the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award, and it says here, this is from Sports Illustrated. It says, Colin Kaepernick made his truth known when he decided not to stand for the national anthem. He had a lot of football left to play and a lot more money to make when he made his decision. It was late August 2016. People who were anonymous in life had become famous in death. Philando Castile. So they go through all this stuff about him standing up for the victims of police brutality and police shootings. It says it took 2 weeks for anyone from the media to ask him about it. That Kaepernick explained that he was making a statement about the inequality and social justice, about the way this country oppresses black people and people of color. It says, to me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. He added, there are bodies in the street, he said then, and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder. In the last 16 months, Kaepernick's truth has been twisted, distorted, and used for political gain. It has cost him at least a year of his NFL career and the income that should have come with it. But still, it is his truth. He has not wavered from it. He does not regret speaking it. He has caused millions of people to examine it. And quietly, he donated nearly $1 million to support it. For all these reasons, for his steadfastness and his fight for social justice, for his adherence to his beliefs, no matter the cost, Colin Kaepernick is the recipient of the 2017 Sports Illustrated Muhammad Ali Legacy Award. Each year, SI and the Ali family honor a figure who embodies the ideals of sport. So whatever, this is all a bunch of fluff. All a bunch of fluff. Garbage. Someday America may well be a better place because of Colin Kaepernick. This is hard to see now. History is not meant to be analyzed in real time, but we are, well, they do it all the time. I mean, they put Caitlyn Jenner on the cover of SI. I think that counts as analyzing history in real time. But we are having conversations we need to have, and this should eventually lead to changes we need to make. Police officers, politicians, and citizens can work together to recreate a safer, fairer, more just civil society. Kaepernick did not want to sacrifice his football career for this, but he did it anyway. It is a rare person who gives up what he loves in exchange for what he believes. J-Man Truth Seeker says in a message that for some reason Google hid, Kaepernick is such a loser, although I think he probably got paid off to do what he did by Obama. Well, I don't know about that, but look, this hero worship is missing the point. Colin Kaepernick's protest had no feasible goals. It's, people can say, oh, one person can change the world. Well, they can change the world. They can. I mean, right? Think about it, guys. You can change the world, but then you might have to explain how. And I fail to see how Colin Kaepernick, an NFL quarterback, can kneel for the national anthem and end police brutality that way. You can't. And what he's done instead is something that's far more destructive. He's caused this fault line among fans between people that think that there should be politics in sports and people that don't think that there should be politics in sports. And then there's people who think that he should be in the NFL, and there's people that don't feel he should be in the NFL. And I'll make my position clear on this in case it's just not, in case people misunderstood it. It's really kind of sophisticated. Yeah, I think Colin Kaepernick should have been signed by a team if you're really talking about ability. But if you're talking about, trying to have people actually go to the games and enjoy them, no, I wouldn't sign Colin Kaepernick. The man, first of all, the man acted in front of the press last year like he was some sort of Christian martyr, like he was doing something that was. I mean, you could just see the smugness there, where he was talking with that tone of voice that he had this air of, oh, I'm finally woke. I can talk about social justice and whatever. Well, even other members of the protest are able to speak more competently on it than Colin Kaepernick is, because they're able to speak to reporters without some sort of pretentious bullshit in their voice. And that was what he did when he stood with the Fidel Castro shirt on, when he had the pig socks. He grew the stupid afro, and I don't care what anybody says about it being natural or whatever. It looks idiotic with a helmet. So Colin Kaepernick, in my mind, if you want to talk about somebody who would have actually taken this somewhere, and I don't think that you can end again. I don't think he could have done it either, because it doesn't make any sense. How can a professional athlete end police brutality? So Richard Sherman would have been a great choice. Anquan Bolden would have been a great choice. You have some people in the NBA that would have been great choices, like Danny Granger or LeBron James, obviously, and then there's Dwayne Wade, who's actually lost family, friends to. It wasn't police violence. It was a drive-by shooting. I think his cousin was killed in a drive-by shooting, if I'm not mistaken. So, Colin Kaepernick, to get the SI Player of the Year award, or the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award, he's accomplished literally nothing. He's first of all, he's played himself out of the NFL because of his outrageous behavior. He went last week and he went to on Thanksgiving Day. On Thanksgiving. Look, everybody knows that you have extreme political opinions. That's fine. But if you think that because of that, people are gonna, people that you look at somebody who's a GM for the Indianapolis Colts, the team that could use some quarterback help, and they're looking at these stories and they're thinking about signing you, and they're worrying about whether it's really worth it to sign a quarterback excuse me, signing a quarterback at a time when their season is probably over. It's very doubtful they'll make the playoffs, and this guy could cause a serious fan backlash. No, they're not going to do it. What are you, out of your mind? Reality check says he has destroyed the NFL over a myth. Who wants to sign a troublemaker? He should have done all this in his own time, not on the field. I think his afro is hilarious. The bigger it gets, the more I laugh. Well, what I laugh about is that they think that it has. Okay, here's his question again. Would you sign him? This is my answer. Okay, and wait till the end before you guys comment. The reason why a team would not want to sign this guy is really simple, and I've explained it before. If I'm a coach for the Indianapolis Colts, if I'm a coach for Kansas City Chiefs, who they don't have a problem, but if I'm a coach for name your team, Arizona Cardinals, whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what city it is, and I sign a guy who is an icon of political activists, extreme radical political activists, and I, for some reason, I have him on the bench originally, and then my quarterback, the starting quarterback, sucks. I have all these fans that are coming and they're saying, well, put him in the game. So I put him in the game, and then he sucks too. And then I want to yank him. I want to bench him, put somebody else in. Well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have bullshit media calling you racist or calling you other names for benching this guy. And basically they'll blame you for everything, and then you get fired. Colin Kaepernick, just so you know, before all this NFL boycott crap, before all of his stuff with the anthem protest, he burned through John Harbaugh, or Jim Harbaugh, who, with Alex Smith, he was turning the team into world beaters. Kaepernick did get them to the Super Bowl because Smith got injured, and then eventually they traded him. So then he has one other good season with the Niners, and then he starts to tail off, and Harbaugh ends up getting fired. Then there's another coach that was a complete disaster partly because of Kaepernick, whose skills had significantly diminished. So no, I wouldn't sign him, because as a coach or as a GM, I want a guy who is going to increase the chances that I keep my job and that I win. And he doesn't do that. In fact, he's much more of a risk than he's a reward. And the politics is only part of that problem. And by the way, so this is the last story, but it's related to Colin Kaepernick anyway. It says that Eric Reid, Michael Thomas, and others break, or no, just those two, break from NFL Players Coalition and cite issues with the founders. So you have Eric Reid and Michael Thomas. It says ESPN reported Wednesday that the NFL has offered a proposal to the coalition that would allocate more than $89 million to causes considered critically important to the African American communities, with hopes that this would prompt players to stop protesting during the national anthem. So this will work, bribing them. Giving to charity is fine, but this is like saying, oh, we're gonna give money for them to shut up, not because we think that there is a problem or not a problem with this issue. Some members of the coalition did not like the league's approach, nor the way in which negotiations with the league were handled by Bolden and Jenkins. Reid, who was the first NFL player to follow Colin Kaepernick's lead and kneel during the national anthem, told ESPN that he and other players were dissatisfied with the structure of the Players Coalition. Myself and the aforementioned protesting players have voiced these concerns numerous times to Malcolm concerning the structure of the organization and how we want to be involved more with the NFL in those communications. It has not transpired, Reid told ESPN. And Eric Reid's no dummy. I think Eric Reid, believe it or not, who I don't like, but I think he's smarter than Colin Kaepernick. And I've seen him speak on camera. And this is an issue of being able to actually talk about what you think, which Kaepernick is not good at. He's good at talking about things that he thinks people should care about, but that he himself doesn't understand. Says, we've come to find out that it's actually Malcolm and Anquan's organization. Nobody else really has a stake in the org. So what the hell is this organization about? What these NFL players are doing is now they're fighting over who has control over who protests the national anthem. And that, my friends, just proves that this has become a joke, and that's it. It's just complete bullshit, this protest. It has nothing to look. I don't want people to get shot by the police either. I've had, I haven't really had that much of a history of running into the police that much. But I've had friends that have. I've actually had people in my family that have had run-ins with the police, and I don't think that that's one of the reasons that I don't stand for this crap where everybody's doing this Blue Lives Matter stuff. Well, I don't care really about the police. The police can worry about themselves. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that I do in order to help the police is, if there's somebody that is harming somebody else, yeah, I'd probably make some sort of statement. Some of these child molesters or whatever. It actually depends on the crime. If it's a crime that I think is harmless, I might never ever talk to the police. If I've had friends that are, they're involved in all sorts of stuff that's just harmless, victimless crimes, as they call them. So no, I'm not one of these people that says, oh, if you don't salute our flag, yeah, you can go to hell or whatever. Yeah, I think that we should salute the flag. I think but it is protected by some people. It is protected for some people under the First Amendment, which would be the fans. If the fans don't want to stand for the anthem, they don't have to stand for the anthem. The players, though, they're under contract. Typically, in the past, teams have required their teams to stand for the anthem. Okay, so no, it's not your place. This is your job. If I went to your job and I started talking to people and saying, well, showing them pictures of aborted fetuses and things like that, showing them pictures of what's another good animal cruelty. Okay, I started trying to convert people to veganism. I started showing them pictures of animal cruelty. Yeah, I'd be fired, and justifiably. It's not I don't go to the workplace in order to give my views to my coworkers. Sometimes we'll have conversations, but if I make it my business all day, which I could have been doing and I don't, then I certainly call the question whether I should have the job at all, because the boss could walk downstairs and say, hey, I don't care about anything you're saying. You should shut the fuck up and get back onto your task. And even though I have a boss who probably would not do that, that's not the point. The point is that you show up to do something. You don't show up to be some sort of martyr, which is what Kaepernick is making himself out to be. So, J-Man says, I've had. Hold on. Reality Check says, do you think his Muslim girlfriend had something to do with his protesting? Yeah. Yes, she did. It's not, do I think she did? She did have something to do with it. It's true. She's had more to do with it. She's done more to damage his career than any of these so-called racist owners could ever do. By tweeting out that picture of Ray Lewis and Steve Bisciotti, she is a disgrace of a human being. Colin Kaepernick, if he really cared about his career, he would have dumped her a long time ago. But I don't think he cares about his career. I think he cares about being that super activist man now. He's basically the black football Trudeau. J-Man Truth Seeker says, I've had more run-ins with the police than I would want to talk to them about, but I could tell you that I've never met a bad cop. I have. I've met bad cops. So that's why I do take the benefit of the doubt sometimes with these shooting these people that were shot by the police or whatever. I want to look at the facts. I don't want to make this a question about, well, do you support the police or do you support thugs? Well, if the police act like morons, if they don't know what the hell they're doing, if they're incompetent. I used to have a neighbor that was an idiot cop, and he's still an idiot cop. He's still arresting people. Apparently, arrested somebody lately for insulting his Pittsburgh Steelers pin. So, it's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem when you're being forced to either take a side or shut up. And I refuse to take a side. I take the side of making my own decision. And I think you guys should too. If you support Kaepernick, fine, but you should have a reason. If you don't support Kaepernick, you should also have a reason. It can't just be about hating him because he's ugly, which he is, and he's a moron. And he's probably the worst person to have led this protest. There's plenty of people more intelligent that could have made the point. If you obey laws, if you obey their commands, you're usually gone with the ticket within 5 to 10 minutes. Just obey their instructions. Talking about cops. Reality Check says halal meat is cruel. I will show that. And he says, I agree with you. Can't say anything without getting your head bit off. Don't talk about Trudeau. He's destroyed Canada. I know he's destroyed Canada. He's an idiot. I saw some speech of his today about the Islamophobia or whatever. Islamophobia. I think that you see somebody talking about phobias who himself looks like he just lives in fear all the time. He looks like probably this guy who I watched Justin Trudeau speak. It's like watching somebody who they basically, it's like they were supposed to plan like a picnic, and suddenly they see a bunch of bears and wolves coming out of the woods. That's the way Justin Trudeau seems to speak all the time, regardless of what the topic is. He's some sort of emotional wreck. So that's it for today. Just going through a few topics. I think I'm going to go. I do have to get up earlier tomorrow, so I can't waste too much time. I do have to. They're going to eat some of that instant ramen noodle stuff. We have a knockoff brand called Tradition Soup that we buy. So I have that to look forward to. Reality Check says, I can't watch him. I start shouting at the TV. Well, get him voted out of office. That's the best I can say. Good night. Please comment on the video below. Share the video. Subscribe to the channel. And let me know what you think. And so if you want, also you can suggest topics in the comments, because as of right now I don't have that many commenters.